Hi, my name is Mary Morassuti, and I'm the founder of H.U.B Inc., which stands for Heighten Your Business Inc. And I am here with Naomi Shaw, Senior Vice President, Human Resources of Scotiabank, Sloane Muldoon, Senior Vice President, Prairie Region, Canadian Branch Banking at Scotiabank. Naomi and Sloane are part of the advisory board for the Scotiabank Women Initiative. Thank you for being here, ladies.
Thank you so much, Mary.
A pleasure.
So what I'd like to discuss today and focus on is leadership for female entrepreneurs and how female entrepreneurs at this time can pivot and find resilience in their business during COVID-19. So I'd like to get started with you, Sloane, and my first question is that one of the ways that we can be resilient as entrepreneurs is to be resourceful and accessing support. What sort of programs or relief measures can women entrepreneurs access, and where can they find them?
Okay. So, Mary, thanks for that question. And relief measures have been a big topic of discussion during COVID. So aside from the government programs that are available, there are a number of programs available within Scotiabank for both small businesses and businesses, as well as on the personal front. And there is an outline of all of the relief measures support on our Scotiabank.com website. But what I would say in general, from a personal point of view, there is some optional relief that one may be eligible for relative to credit card payment, line of credit payment, possibly mortgage. And on the small business front, potential relief for lines of credit as well as loans. As I mentioned, there is a host of information on the Scotiabank.com website. However, what I would recommend is if you have not already spoken with your advisor or had a conversation and or a virtual meeting perhaps, that would be the best next step. Having a real discussion about your own situation relative to your business and your own personal finances would be the best way to get the best advice for what relief measures you are eligible for and which ones you might want to take upon.
And do you find, Sloane, that you're getting a lot of calls and a lot of female entrepreneurs wanting to know information and how they can access all this information?
Yes, Mary. In fact, I think it was March 16th, my own personal dentist, our client, called me, and she was very concerned around her ability to operate her business. And I could hear the emotional weighing in her voice. So as I immediately transitioned her to an advisor who was able to walk through the measures that were available, I could see that she could take some of the strong emotion out of some of the decisions she was trying to make, as well as make sound financial decisions. So what I would say is there are many, many inbound calls, and most importantly, we're spending our efforts making outbound calls to make sure we're in touch with each of our small business clients to understand their individual needs during this time.
Sloane, if we can discuss about increasing revenue and how we can gain access to additional capital. At times, small and medium-sized businesses will need capital, but before they can rise to the next level, they need to figure out how they can increase that capital. So maybe you can take us through some steps and how a female entrepreneur can access some of this capital.
Sure, Mary. So maybe what I'd start with is the Scotiabank Women Initiative was actually founded on 3 pillars. Number 1, access to capital. Number 2, mentorship. And number 3, education. And maybe I'd like to expand a little bit on the access to capital and provide a few factoids that I think are very interesting. So of a recent survey of about 1,000 small business entrepreneurs in Canada, what we found was female entrepreneurs are less apt to apply for credit versus the male entrepreneurs who are more apt to apply for credit. But what we also learned through this is the female entrepreneur was more apt to be approved for credit versus her male counterpart, which maybe speaks to the level of risk that a female entrepreneur may not want to take relative to taking on debt and additional capital.
And why do you think that? And why do you think that, Sloane?
Yeah, so I think inherently a female entrepreneur wants to tick all of the boxes. She wants to ensure that her financial knowledge is very strong, financial acumen is very strong, and that she has covered all bases of her business plan to make sure that she is a solid candidate for not only obtaining capital, but able to have an increased confidence in repaying the capital. So it's really important that we recognize where we need additional knowledge financially, where we want to raise our acumen, and therein lies the opportunity to raise the confidence of a female entrepreneur to be able to start her business, grow her business, and expand her business when capital is required.
And Naomi, I just want to get your intake on that question as well. Why do you think that female entrepreneurs are scared to take that risk?
You know, I think it's not necessarily the entrepreneur, but the women in that kind of phrase. I think that's relevant because I was nodding as Sloane was talking because, you know, from my perspective on the HR side, I actually see very similar behaviors when women are, say, potentially competing for jobs. So for promotions, you know, women are, you know, you talked about ticking the boxes, Sloane, but women tend to want to tick off more of the boxes than a male candidate would for a job, for example. And, you know, the chances of success for a woman then who competes for a job and gets the job is a lot higher. So it's very, very similar. So I found that quite interesting.
And it's interesting, Naomi, that you say that, because I've heard that before too, that when women apply for positions, they need to have, let's say there's 10 characteristics for that position, they need to at least have 8 or 9, where their male counterpart could have 2 or 3 and still apply for the position.
Yeah, fascinating but true.
Sloane, I wanted to speak about, you know, we are now in some difficult times, and with COVID-19, it means a lot of changes for women entrepreneurs. And there's a lot of self-reflection, both personally and about their companies and their financials. And right now, it's really about how do we learn how to crunch the numbers and be able to budget for success. If you can kind of speak on that, and what are some of the attributes that they should be looking at?
Sure. So number one is everybody needs a plan, whether it was pre-COVID, during COVID, or post-COVID. Everybody needs a plan, whether it's my hairdresser, whether it's my dentist, or it's my favorite restaurant. And that's to ensure that as market conditions change and we go through potential downturns, that there is a plan in place. And some of the things relative to the plan that I would raise it as questions, you know, if my bricks and mortars close, as some have, how could I generate additional revenue streams? What are some of the other channels or medium of which I can do business? How can I ensure that my receivables and the payments owed to me are being able to be collected on a timely basis? And or how can I pay my payables on a timely basis? And accessing all of the digital channels available. I would also suggest that one think about their online delivery. Through COVID and beyond, we're seeing consumers purchase more and more goods and services online. So I think it's really important for entrepreneurs to think about how they can be innovative with their online delivery during this time and beyond, because there are going to be some lessons learned. They're going to be able to generate some additional revenue streams that we may have not thought of pre-COVID.
That's very interesting what you're saying, Sloane, because what I'm also hearing is that we have to be able to be flexible, creative, and be able to pivot with these times. And that's really the way we're going to grow our business and continue to prosper, if that we can be flexible and move forward.
Absolutely. Finding different ways of interacting with the customers, finding different ways of interacting with our advisors around us. Now it might not be face-to-face, but it's virtual, and being really innovative of how we can do that going forward.
That's excellent. And I think that's going to be the key to a lot of female entrepreneur success, being able to have that flexibility with their business. Naomi, I also wanted to kind of speak with you about leadership and how important it is for female entrepreneurs, the type of leader that they are. And especially during this time with COVID-19, I think we have to look at how we reassure our teams, how we build confidence in our clients, and how do we continue to generate sales and growth in a time of such uncertainty.
Yeah, it's been a very, very interesting time, that's for sure. And I think, you know, this period of the pandemic and the crisis has been a real test of leadership. And so I feel quite fortunate because in my role, not only do I get to be a leader, but I also get to learn from and see leaders who have, I think, managed the process very well and maybe some less well. And so from my experience in observing leaders as well as speaking, I actually sought out a business leader who somehow has managed to continue to generate sales and growth in this environment. And I've gleaned some really good insights and actually made a bit of a list. But I think kind of overarching is really that what's important, whether it's employees or your clients, is that they know that you are there for them, that you are available. So it's about being there. And so they know that you're there to support and help them whenever they need you. So maybe if you will indulge me, Mary, I'll go through the list because I thought it was really helpful when I went through it with business leaders. So, number one is really over-communicate. You can't communicate enough to both staff and customers. Number two, be transparent as you can. Number three, provide regular updates and make it a regular discipline, whether it's daily or weekly, to ensure that all stakeholders are updated. And then I think if you make sure you have a cadence of communication, because then people will know that they can count on that and they know when they will hear from you next. Number four, take a regular pulse check with employees as well as regular pulse checks for client feedback. And number five, automate processes. And I think back to what Sloane said as well, and think about how you do business to overcome the disruptions caused by social distancing. Number six, build on the strength of all team members and offer constant encouragement and recognition. It's very important, I think, in these times. And number seven, ask for feedback and offer feedback regularly. And I think the other point is, we have to accept and acknowledge that the environment's very different. It's, very difficult to kind of know what's going to happen and know what the outcomes are going to be. And so don't be too hard on yourself. Be able to ebb and flow. And back to the earlier discussion with Sloane, the flexibility. So don't be too hard on yourself.
And that's what I'm hearing. The thread through this time is be flexible. But something that you touched on, Naomi, that was so beautifully said was how to be transparent, how important it is. And I think that allows for your team or your clients to kind of see the person, the human touch with yourself as well, and how they move together through this time.
Right.
And now something that also popped up when you were speaking, Naomi. What do you do when you're communicating with your team and you have a team member who is struggling or having a difficult time or a challenge during COVID-19?
Yeah, and I would say what's very important for any leader is to really ramp up the level of communication and your one-on-ones as well. So I think different forums. With your direct reports in particular. Because if you are doing that, then you will be able to sense and understand, and you'll hopefully build a good relationship and strong enough rapport with them that they feel that they can be open and transparent and vulnerable with you, especially if you've done the same. And I think what's very, very important is that we look for those, potential signals, because we all, being honest, have good and bad days. Right. And being able to support your employees through that and giving them some, I'm going to say sometimes permission to take a step back, take a break, take a day off, because people are very, very dedicated and they feel they want to work through. And, fortunately at Scotiabank as well, we do have additional tools and support available for employees. To help them with their mental health. So, directing them to those kinds of tools that are available as well.
That's excellent. Thank you, Naomi. We did touch on communication, and communication now has changed. And so this question is for you, Naomi. During this time with coronavirus, we are setting up, instead of being in person, in meetings, we are now in front of our living room and our kitchen table. So what are some of the key takeaways for how to optimize communication during this unprecedented time?
Yeah, so I think I touched on kind of the frequency. I think you really have to ramp up the frequency. But I've seen some interesting tactics, from some leaders in terms of how they communicate. I think with video conferencing capability, I think it's wonderful because then people can see you and you can see them. But what I would say is make sure everybody's comfortable with it, make it optional. One of the studies that I read is that it's actually more stressful to watch yourself on video and follow along in the meeting than it is just to sit at a meeting room table and talk to the person. So, give people that flexibility to participate by video. And, we touched on it briefly as well, but, don't be afraid to show vulnerability in your communications and be a role model. And so I think it's even, I've seen where people on, our internal kind of Facebook, where they are showcasing what they are doing for their downtime. So they're taking vacation days, and leaders are taking vacation days and encouraging people to do so and sharing what they've done online. So I've seen that in terms of a different kind of communication. And I think, I would say work-life, I'm going to call it work-life imbalance. I feel that it's become increasingly blurred these days because, just looking at all of us, we're in our homes, and if I want to sit and relax, I know my computer's just right there, waiting with emails to be answered. So the lines become a lot more blurred. And so I've seen some leaders also put some rules around communication, kind of time zones and meeting time zones, and trying to restrict it to between 9 and 5, maybe even nothing happening between noon and 1:30 when people are making lunch for their children. And so I've seen that's been an interesting development as well. And I think, it's important as well to always reach out to all levels of your team. So expand who you're communicating with than you normally would otherwise do. And the gratitude piece, I think, is very important as well, which I've mentioned. And I think finally, which I think you don't think about it right away, but don't forget to have fun. So when you're communicating, don't forget to have fun with your teams, right? So have online socials, online contests. And, one of the things that I've started doing was I send a today's smile every day to my team. And that's when I thought, COVID-19 and this self-isolation period would last a month or so. But, it's lasted way longer than I thought, so it's really challenging me to come up with something funny every day still. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to go for months. So I've got like this giant library now of today's smiles that I've been sending to my team.
That's excellent. But Naomi, that is what they will remember during this time and how supportive you were. And I think that's, again, what I'm seeing and hearing from you is how do we support each other during this time and then carry it through after COVID-19 as well.
Right.
Yeah. Another area I'd like to maybe focus on is education. I'm a true believer with female entrepreneurs, education is key. And I know that there's another key pillar, which is education at the Scotiabank Women Initiative. So maybe if you can maybe touch on that, what are some of the educational resources that are offered and where can they access them?
Yeah, and I have to say the team really behind the Scotiabank Women Initiative have been fantastic because there's a lot of tools available on the Knowledge Center. So, I think in the portal you'll find things like learning aids, proprietary and sponsored research that's been done, inspiring commentary to help leaders move their business in the right direction, podcast series for women entrepreneurs. And I think, one of the things that I've really appreciated that have been pulled together is actually the COVID-19 tailored support that's available on the site. And so there's video webinar series to support women and, like this one. And there's also a 5-part podcast focused on resiliency that people can access there as well. So really there's a ton of information there, and I encourage people to check it out if they haven't already.
And something that popped up is the podcast. Tell me a little bit more about the podcast.
Yeah, do you know what? I think that podcast is extremely relevant for women entrepreneurs and quite frankly for everybody. Because I think what we've seen during the pandemic is that, you know, things change. We don't know what the future will bring. And when you're predicting one direction, it quickly can change. And so resiliency has become increasingly important. And I think what else is important is that, you know, we think about self-care and think about ourselves. And so people have probably heard of the analogy to the kind of the video, the safety video that's on airplanes, but really about taking care of yourself first so that you can help others. And so I think that couples very nicely with the resiliency piece. And so I think that's very, very relevant for these times.
Yes, I absolutely do agree with that. Sloane, I want to turn it over to you now. And something that keeps coming up during this pandemic is that there's a lot of challenges for entrepreneurs and that we're calling it the new normal. Is this an issue for working remotely? So can you speak to ways that small business owners can become more innovative in how they structure their business and how they leverage technology to succeed?
Sure, Mary. And you know, as female entrepreneurs who have now become the teachers in the home or giving care to elders or multiple people in your home working remotely, that has had its challenges in early days. And now where I think there's an opportunity to really invest and take some time is over-investing in cash flow projections of what the future may or may not bring. And what I would say is access some of the tools on the Scotiabank Women Initiative website and think about on the go forward, how can I err on the side of caution in my cash flow projections? What would be the worst case scenario? What would be the base case scenario? And what's the upside scenario? And bring along all of those lessons learned that we have incorporated into our businesses during COVID and see if you can apply those post-COVID to generate additional revenue streams and potential upside on your cash flow. So over-investing in those projections and business planning will be key as we come through this.
I like what you just said. You know, I haven't heard it that way. Over-investing. That is, I love that, what you just said. Just expand a little bit so then our viewers can learn a little bit more, because I think there's something even more in that word.
So as an entrepreneur, you're very, very busy, as well as all of the other responsibilities a woman has. And so perhaps there's a time now where we can sit back and really overinvest in what is our business plan, what are the things that we really wanted to do a deep dive on our cash flow in, and taking a little bit of extra time that you didn't have when you were busy with your day-to-day business. So when there is a bit of a lull in the business, make sure we pivot that time towards investing in your business through doing some deep dive cash flow and business planning projections.
That's great. That's fantastic. Naomi, I wanted to speak to you about, you know, we talked about accessing capital, but I want to discuss social capital and what does that mean, in particular in the importance of really developing key relationships. You know, the days of meeting in person and networking are gone for the time being. So I'd love for you to kind of discuss, how do we continue to create strategic relationships?
You know, and as I listened to Sloane as well, so I think the term over-investing applies here as well, right? So it's about encouraging people to over-invest and foster and grow the relationships they already have, as well as over-investing in potentially growing new ones and new connections. And, you know, I mentioned earlier how important it is to remind people that, you know, you are there for them, and they in turn will be there for you. And so I think what's also great is available on the site as well is some information on how you can manage your social capital, but I think it's more important now. And so not being able to meet face-to-face is zero excuse to not manage your social capital. And I think if anything, because we aren't traveling to meet people, you should be able to extend that network.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a real opportunity there. And I think kind of touching a little bit on, what Sloane said earlier as well, if I can make just another comment to kind of key decision makers and leaders for their teams. Because as we think about women and we think about the all of the responsibilities many women entrepreneurs face in terms of, the work environment now, you're at home, you're looking after your kids, or you're looking after, your parents. So you're really kind of balancing all of those things. So, I would ask kind of the leaders and the key decision makers, especially as we look to transitioning back to, say, our work environment. I worry that women will be overwhelmingly the ones impacted and the ones who stay at home if schools don't reopen fully in the fall. So an option I've seen presented by some educators is that students might not be back to school every day, but possibly a couple of days a week. And so if this happens, it's going to be women disproportionately, I think, working from home. So those digital channels will be very important to maintain kind of all kinds of relationships. But as a leader, if your teams are starting to come back to the office, please be mindful of who will be in the office when. And, I encourage everyone, please ensure equal opportunity for interesting work, for promotions, regardless of whether the person is in the physical office space or working from home. And I think that will be part of our challenge going forward. So as much as it's great leveraging kind of the social capital, we have to be mindful that there could be another implication or unintended consequences.
Yeah, and everyone's in, even though we're in it together, as people are saying, we're in it together, but everyone has a different situation. As you said, people have kids, maybe it's a single mom, and that we have to really be mindful of everyone on the team. Something that you mentioned about social capital, and someone said something to me that it is a beautiful time right now to connect with people that you may not have been able to have access to because everyone is at home. And I thought that was brilliant. So you can actually open up your network a little bit more during this time.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I just I have one last question for both of you, and I know we've touched on the new normal and what that includes, and we talked about flexibility, we talked about the ability to pivot quickly and how important that is, and the openness to collaborate and form innovative new partnerships. So all this takes into account that budgets have changed, they're not as big as they used to be, and that entrepreneurs now certainly need to be more resourceful than ever before. So the ability to pivot and to be flexible is huge with your partners. Would love to hear your thoughts of any of these new normal realities. And so let's start Sloane.
Okay, so thanks, Mary. I would maybe comment on is the best time to access capital is obviously when your business doesn't need it. And the best time to build up emergency reserves is when your business is thriving. And I think those are some real lessons that we've learned during COVID, that is how we can plan for eventual downturns that we may face. And I talked a lot about the importance of business planning, and I talked a lot about cash flow projections, and I talked about incorporating digital and technology and resilience into your business plan. But the piece I didn't talk about was surrounding yourself with trusted advisors, whether that's your legal advisor, whether that's your accounting advisor, and most importantly, your banking advisor. It's really important to develop a trusted advisory relationship with your banker. And I will invest in my relationship with you because that's who you need around you during the good times and the bad. And so what I would encourage is if you have not garnered a trusted relationship with your banker, if you endeavor to do so, we'll be reciprocal with that. And I will tell you this, when it is safe to do so and when it is healthy, we are more than interested in coming out to your place of business. Nobody knows your business better than you, and there's nothing more gratifying as a key advisor than understanding your business to a deeper level. So those are a couple of my thoughts as we conclude.
Thank you, Sloane. Naomi, anything you want to touch on?
Yeah, and so I think there have been some real wins and some learnings that you really don't want to lose sight of when we start to come out of the situation. And, you know, one of the things is I found that the technology has been a real leveler. So, you know, doing this kind of meeting, so the ability to be able to do this and have that conversation is, I think, fantastic. And then, you know, I think historically when you do meetings, I would say kind of pre-pandemic, you would have maybe a contingent in a room possibly and a group on video. At least we would have that quite frequently. And then the people who were on video, they didn't have as much of a voice because the table dominated the meeting. So I think it's been a really good leveler that way. So everybody's voice has equal volume now. And so I think that's something I definitely don't want to lose kind of coming out of this. And the other piece that I've seen, and I think it's been touched on throughout our conversation, is innovation. And so we've been really, really pushed to, you know, as Sloane talked about, rethinking your business, you know, how you deliver to your clients, you know, and, you know, internally in an organization like Scotiabank as well, you know, we've really been having to be innovative to be able to respond quickly. And so I think that's something, that's kind of a mindset we don't want to lose. And I think people have realized that we have been able to pivot quickly and we have adjusted and we can, and we have been successful. And so, you know, I would say kind of keep that mindset, and we don't want to lose that either.
And I think human beings are resourceful. They really are creative, resourceful creatures. And I think that during this time, we've seen that a lot. I know with H.U.B, because we are a national Canadian women's group, and now we can come together and our members can access, you know, they can access all the women from Vancouver. So the Toronto women come together online with the women from Vancouver, which we couldn't have done before. So there have been some amazing wins during this time. I want to say thank you so much, Naomi Shaw and Sloane Muldoon, for taking the time to speak to me today. Thank you for everything that you do for female entrepreneurs. And I want to thank the Scotiabank Women Initiative for everything that they do to support female entrepreneurs, and especially during this uncertain time. So thank you very much.
No, thank you so much, Mary.
Thanks, Mary. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.